Welcome to Part 4 of Formative Assessments. I am your host and formative guide, Meredith Gotzel. Last week we discussed the third formative assessment technique, targeted teaching plans. This week we are going to work on the fourth part of formative assessment, giving and working on feedback with students. This technique can be used in all subjects, but my example is going to center around Grade 5, Week 28 of the NYC DOE Science Curriculum. So when we look through the lessons each week, you may have noticed this helpful slide. Teacher support students with disabilities. This gives you lots of helpful tips, programs, and components to use to help your students with IEPs achieve their goals. The component we are going to focus on this week is formative assessment, the feedback stage. So if you have tuned into my previous videos, you will be familiar with what formative assessments are. But here's a quick recap for those of you who are just joining in now. A formative assessment is the component of your lesson where you gather and interpret information about your students' understanding so that you are able to better assist their needs. Simply put, all techniques of formative assessment are a check for understanding. But don't stop at checking. Make sure that you use and relate the information back to your students so you can work together to fill in any gaps and push their learning forward. Please remember, formative assessments are a process that you do with the child, not to the child. This week, we are going to finally arrive at that portion. There are plenty of reasons to use formative assessments. It helps you to track a student's IEP goals. It will guide both your teaching and their learning, plus it will help you rate in the advanced category on your teacher evaluation. The hows come in many forms: checklists, question stems, performance tasks, and student responses, both written, physical, thumbs up, thumbs down, or verbal. Formative assessment is your process of collecting data, whether short or long. And based on the information that you collect, working with your student to fill in any gaps they may have and push them forward. What is conferencing? Conferences are short periods of time where you work one-on-one or in a very small group, where you focus on feedback based on students' responses. Why do we use conferencing? Well, we all know the power of one-on-one time with a student, and conferencing gives you that time. But it is best to have a plan as you go into it so you get the most out of your time. It allows you to work one-on-one with students, get clarification around parts that you may not have understood of their work, or for them to get clarification on directions or content. It's direct communication with a student, and then make sure that you have those written comments for future referral. When you conference either online or in person, there are two key points to hit. First, have a plan. Second, have a record-keeping system. For the plan, remember, conferences are usually only 10 minutes or less, and that's if you're lucky. So make sure to pinpoint what you want to work on with your students during your meeting so that you can get the most bang from your buck. And for your record-keeping system, make sure students have a written or recorded feedback that they are able to refer to after the conference so they are able to implement the feedback and strategies you've discussed. You can do this via Google Comments. You can also do this on a notebook. You can do it in a Google Doc. However, today what we are going to focus on is meeting through breakout rooms and writing Google Comments within Google Slides. In order to leave comments within a Google slide, you are going to go through and first open up your student's Google slide presentation. Now, on the Google slide, you will notice that I have a student who's left a comment in a text box. All I need to do is go up to this top right-hand corner You'll see here are the different comments that we've seen for the history. And click on this little button that says add a comment. And it'll go through and add a comment to this screen. And so I'm able to go through and write in, just as I did up here, my comment for my conference. All right, so I'm going to show you how I do a conference with a student. So the first thing I like to do is make sure that I'm sharing my screen. Since we're working with fifth graders, you can have them also go into their document and follow along as you go through each of the comments. But for this particular thing, I also want to make sure that I'm sharing my screen because we are dealing with a video. And so there are certain parts where I may need to go back and rewatch part of the video with the student so we can stop and talk about it. So I'm going to make sure that I share my screen by clicking the big green arrow that says share screen. Sometimes it's at the bottom, sometimes at the top, depends on your computer. As long as you find this lovely green button and click on it, should be good. Make sure you click on the proper screen that you're going to be showing them. Maybe you're showing them your entire desktop, or I personally like to just show them the one screen that we are going to be focusing on. And then I want to make sure that I click on share sound. So since I am sharing the video with them for certain parts of this conference, I want to make sure that they can also hear it and they don't have to go find the video or anything. And then I click share. 1, 2, 3. All right, so I will begin in 3, 2, 1. All right, so welcome to your conference. So I looked through some of the work that you turned in and it looks like a great start. But I want to go through a couple of different pieces of feedback that I want you to practice with me, make sure that you understand, and are able to then go and try it on your own after we're done meeting. Does that sound good? Sounds great. All right, so I noticed that after you watched this video, you went through and you wrote down a few things about their homes need to be hot, salty, lots of hot, salty water, and then you put blue-green algae. So when we go back and we look at this part of the video, we're going to notice a few things that they talk about, and I did notice in that part of the video, they do talk about all of those specific things. However, I want you to get just a little bit more specific. Now remember, when we're taking notes, we are jotting. However, I want you to jot some key facts. So instead of just saying it's hot, let's go back and look at the video and see just how hot it is. So I'm going to go back to about 10 seconds before, since that's when it is. And you know what? I don't even need to necessarily start the video. What can you see on my screen that shows you a fact about the heat of the lake? It's 140 degrees. Great, that seems pretty hot, right? Yeah, so we can put that on the notes. Water is 140 degrees. That's a quick jot and works for your notes, but they can also go through and give you specifics then. So let's watch a little bit more, and this time I want you to look at blue-green algae. I want you to get ready to jot down some notes about why it's important that there's lots of hot, salty water and blue-green algae.
140 degrees Fahrenheit. And salty. That's right, they need a hot, salty lake. Because hot and salty are the optimal conditions for blue-green algae to grow. And guess what flamingos eat? You guessed it. Fun fact.
So, why do flamingos need to have hot, salty water? Because it's the best place for blue-green algae to grow. Very good. And what do they need to have, or why do they need to have their blue-green algae? They need it because it's their food. Good. They need it to eat. So you can just write main food helps it to grow. And let's be specific there with the helps it to grow. Let's try helps blue-green algae to grow. Very important. So when you're doing these notes, remember, you need to go through and be a little bit more specific and give us some good facts, but still keep them short because we're stopping and jotting. So remember, short, specific facts, why it's important. What are you going to be looking for? Short, specific facts, why it's important. So we have that here. So I'm going to write 2 things to jot. Short facts and why it's important. And I'm even going to put a little da, 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 so you're able to see it. So while I go through and I do tell you both of those things in my initial feedback, now you can definitely go through and look at that last piece of feedback so you can see the 2 things that I want you to do as you go and you do slide number 8. Do you have any questions for me? No. Do you understand what you're supposed to do? Yes. Will you please repeat back to me what you are supposed to go and do? I'm supposed to go look for specific facts and write down why they are important. Very good. Go ahead back into the main call and work on that. If you have any questions, you can put a comment and tag me in that. Have a good day. Then the student would go back and complete the independent work that I had just assigned them. So I'm able to go through and see, all right, did the conference work? Do we need to conference about something else? And the cycle can continue. So I can continue to relay the feedback to students, make sure that they understand it, and practice it with them. Here's a quick recap. In this video, we reviewed the what, how, and why of formative assessments, the what, how, and why of conferencing, the implementation of conferencing through Zoom and Google Comments, and I did a model of a student conference. Next week, we will review week 29 of the NYC DOE Science Curriculum. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm Meredith Godsall. Have a great week.